Welcome to Revenge Unfolded.
Friends say family is your biggest strength. But what if your own blood becomes your worst enemy? My name is Clara Mitchell, and this is the story of how my cousin destroyed my life and how I destroyed hers. The fog rolled over the edges of the Mitchell estate, clinging to the old stone walls. London's chill pressed against Clara Mitchell as she stepped out of her car, her heels clicking softly on the driveway. Her body was tired, her mind buzzing with the events of the day. She had just been promoted at work, a hard-earned recognition that should have filled her with pride. But tonight, the estate felt colder than usual, almost alive with whispers she could not yet hear. Dinner was tense. The grand dining room, with its chandelier and polished mahogany table, seemed to shrink with every passing second. Richard Mitchell, Clara's father, sat at the head of the table, rigid and calculating as ever. James, her younger brother, tried to keep the atmosphere light, but even his warm smile faltered under the unspoken tension. And then there was Vivian, Clara's cousin, the woman who could smile like an angel and stab like a serpent in the same breath. Vivian's gaze caught Clara's as she leaned toward Richard, whispering something. The small smirk on her face made Clara's stomach tighten. "You know, Clara," Vivian said, her voice silk wrapped around venom, "sometimes I wonder if you even belong in this family." Clara didn't flinch. Her voice remained calm, measured. "Interesting. And why is that?" Vivian tilted her head, feigning innocence. "Oh, nothing. Just observing." Clara knew better. It was never nothing. Later that night, the truth came to light. Vivian had sabotaged a critical deal at Clara's firm, putting her hard-earned reputation at risk. Clara confronted her father, expecting at least a flicker of concern. Instead, he brushed it aside. "You've always been too soft, Clara," he said. His tone detached. Vivian has a sharper mind for these things. Clara's hands clenched beneath the table. A cold rage stirred inside her. This wasn't the first time she had been overlooked, dismissed, humiliated by her own family. But this was deliberate. She went to her room later, the fog pressing against her window pane. She stared at the ceiling, letting the anger and betrayal settle in. Memories of childhood came rushing back. Vivian humiliating her in front of guests, whispering cruel jokes, planting seeds of doubt in their father's mind. The sense of injustice was suffocating. "I will not let her destroy me, not without paying the price," Clara whispered to herself. It wasn't just revenge she felt. It was survival. It was reclaiming her dignity. The next morning, Clara began her silent war. She couldn't confront Vivian directly, not yet. She needed information, proof, leverage. She called Sophia, her best friend and a sharp-eyed journalist, who agreed to help. Together, they dove into Vivian's world. Emails, financial records, and social media accounts revealed a web of deception. Vivian had debts hidden behind fake investments. She had manipulated friends and colleagues, and she had schemes that reached far beyond what Clara had imagined. James had discovered something on his own. Vivian had been meeting with a mysterious businessman in secret. The meetings were urgent, clandestine, hinting at a plan that could jeopardize the family estate. Clara realized the stakes were higher than she had thought. This was no petty jealousy. This was a calculated, dangerous game. At work, a colleague named Daniel became an unexpected ally. Vivian had tried to manipulate him too, but he saw the truth and began feeding Clara information documents, observations, insights that could help her craft her plan. And then there was Ethan. A stranger at first, he approached Clara quietly, offering cryptic guidance. "Patience is your greatest weapon," he said one evening, his voice low and steady. "Strike too soon, and everything will collapse." Clara leaned over her laptop, eyes narrowing at the latest revelation. "I need to strike carefully. One wrong move, and it could all blow back," she admitted. Sophia's fingers never stopped typing. "Don't worry, we'll expose her. piece by piece. The first trap was set. Clara anonymously leaked evidence of Vivian's financial mismanagement to a local media outlet. The story hit quietly at first, but it spread quickly. By the next family dinner, Vivian's composure was flawless, but her eyes betrayed her suspicion. Someone was onto her. Clara felt the sting of isolation when her father defended Vivian publicly. He praised her poise, her intelligence, all while dismissing Clara's achievements. Painful memories of humiliation flooded back the cruel jokes, the sly manipulations, the constant favoritism. Every childhood insult, every sly glance, every whispered rumor suddenly felt connected. Vivian, meanwhile, was not idle. She began setting her own traps, attempting to frame Clara for corporate theft. It was a tightrope walk, each step filled with danger. But Ethan's timely warnings kept Clara safe. She evaded Vivian's plans, gathering evidence quietly, planting seeds of doubt between Vivian and their father. One night, Vivian confronted Ethan privately, furious. "Who's trying to ruin me?" she demanded, her voice trembling with anger. Ethan's response was calm, deliberate, chilling. Sometimes, the most dangerous enemies are the ones closest to you. The tension tightened, an invisible noose around the Mitchell estate. Clara knew that the real battle was just beginning, and deep down, she relished the storm that was about to hit, knowing that the first move had been hers. Clara sat in her apartment, the London fog pressing against the windows, and opened her laptop. Every email, every social post, every financial transaction was a thread. And she intended to pull them all, one by one. Vivian's life, carefully polished for the world to see, was a maze of lies and debts. Sophia sat across from her, fingers flying over the keyboard. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a series of bank statements. "These aren't just bad investments. She's hiding millions in unpaid debts and secret accounts." Clara's eyes narrowed. "And she's been manipulating everyone, friends, colleagues, even her own family. If we expose this, she won't know what hit her." Meanwhile, James stumbled across his own revelation. While taking the dog out for a walk near the estate's rear gardens, he noticed Vivian slipping into a private meeting with a sharply dressed man he had never seen before. Their conversation was hushed, almost frantic. He crept closer, straining to hear. "This deal is crucial," Vivian's voice hissed. "Once I control the estate, nothing will stop me." James froze. He could feel the weight of what he'd overheard. This wasn't just jealousy or sibling rivalry. Vivian was planning to seize the family estate, and if no one stopped her, everything their parents had built could be lost. Back in London, Clara met Daniel at a quiet cafe. He slid a folder across the table, filled with memos, emails, and internal company files. "I couldn't ignore it anymore," he said quietly. "Vivian's manipulation goes deeper than you know. She's been trying to sabotage you for months." Clara's jaw tightened. "Thank you, Daniel. This will help. Every piece of proof counts." Days passed in a tense rhythm. Clara received another call, this time from Ethan. His voice was calm, almost eerie. "You need to be precise," he said. "One misstep and Vivian will turn the tables. I know her. She thrives on chaos. But you have patience on your side." Clara rubbed her temples. "I need a plan. Something that will hit hard. But secretly." Ethan paused. "The first step is subtle. Don't confront her directly. Use the tools she's already exposed to herself." Clara nodded, the gears turning in her mind. She had a plan, one that would slowly unravel Vivian's carefully crafted life. The first trap was simple, yet effective. Clara anonymously leaked evidence of Vivian's financial mismanagement to a local media outlet. The report was detailed, professional, undeniable. By the time dinner came, the news had already spread online. Vivian entered the dining room with her usual poise, but her eyes flickered. Suspicion clouded her perfect smile. Clara noticed it immediately. Vivian was realizing finally, that someone was coming for her. Clara felt a twinge of pain as her father, Richard, praised Vivian's calm handling of the situation. "She carries herself remarkably under pressure," he said, glancing at Clara with a faint, dismissive smile. Clara forced herself to remain composed. Memories surged, humiliations from the past, whispered insults at family gatherings, sly tricks Vivian had used to undermine her confidence. Every childhood slight, every orchestrated embarrassment now seemed to form a larger, more sinister pattern. Clara's determination solidified. But Vivian was clever. She set her own trap. One evening, Clara received an email, a false accusation of corporate theft, with forged evidence that pointed directly to her. Panic flashed briefly in Clara's mind, but Ethan's warning had prepared her. She didn't panic. She stayed calm, reviewing the files carefully. "This is a trap," she whispered to herself. "But it won't work." Ethan's next message confirmed her instincts. "Do not engage directly. Wait. She underestimates your patience. That is her weakness." Clara began working to sow doubt between Vivian and their father. She hinted at inconsistencies in Vivian's stories, at secrets that could harm the family's reputation if uncovered. Richard, though strict and stern, was deeply conscious of social image. Clara leveraged this silently, watching as subtle cracks appeared in Vivian's armor. The tension escalated. Every interaction with Vivian became a chess match. A look, a word, a pause, they all held hidden meaning. Vivian grew restless, frustrated by invisible attacks she could neither predict nor prove. One night, Vivian confronted Ethan directly, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. "Who is trying to ruin me?" Ethan's reply was calm, deliberate, almost a whisper that cut sharper than any scream. "Sometimes, the most dangerous enemies are the ones closest to you." Vivian's frustration was palpable. Her steps quickened, her schemes became reckless. Clara, meanwhile, moved with precision, collecting proof, planting doubts, and watching the pieces fall into place. Even James became more involved. He documented every secret meeting, every unusual transaction, every whispered conversation. Each piece was a puzzle, and Clara had all the pieces to create the perfect picture of Vivian's betrayal. Clara also prepared emotionally. She knew this battle was more than just revenge. It was about reclaiming herself, proving her worth, and exposing the truth without losing herself in the darkness. Every night, she rehearsed her strategy, imagining every possible reaction from Vivian and her father, refining her plan to perfection. As days turned into weeks, the Mitchell estate became a pressure cooker of hidden tensions. Vivian's confidence cracked in small, almost imperceptible ways. A misdirected glance, a hint of anger, a momentary hesitation, Clara noted them all. She knew the final confrontation was approaching, and in the quiet of her apartment, Clara whispered to herself, "This ends on my terms. Every lie, every betrayal will be revealed." The storm was gathering. The pieces were set. The trap was nearly complete. And when it sprang, no one would escape its impact. Not Vivian, not the father who favored her, not even the family that had once overlooked Clara. The Mitchell estate was quiet that evening, but the tension inside the walls was suffocating. Clara walked through the corridors, her heels silent against the marble floor. Every shadow seemed to whisper. Every glance from a family member was weighted with hidden meaning. The trap she had set was almost ready, and Vivian's carefully constructed life was starting to crack at the edges. Clara had spent weeks gathering proof, leveraging James's observations, Daniel's insider information, and Sophia's hacking skills. Every secret Vivian had kept buried was now within Clara's reach. Each email, bank statement, and hidden agreement was a weapon waiting for the right moment. Vivian's behavior was changing. She became restless at the estate, her smiles too wide, her laughter too sharp. Every time Clara entered a room, Vivian's gaze followed her, calculating, suspicious. Clara remained calm, a mask of serenity hiding the storm of her plotting. She had learned to control her emotions, to wait, to let Vivian overreach. James joined Clara in the library one evening, whispering urgently. "I saw her again," he said, his voice low. "She's meeting that businessman. Ethan's information was correct. They're planning something big, maybe even to take over the estate." Clara's eyes narrowed. "We have to be ready. Every move from now on must be precise." Daniel visited shortly after, slipping her a thick folder. "These are internal memos and agreements," he said quietly. "Vivian has been manipulating investments, lying about debts, and using your colleagues to cover her tracks. You have everything you need to expose her." Clara studied the documents carefully. Perfect. Timing is everything. One wrong moment and she'll turn this back on me. Ethan's voice, calm and measured, came through in another message. "The key is patience. Let her make the first mistake. She underestimates you. That's where she will fall." Clara felt a strange mixture of exhilaration and caution. She had waited for this opportunity, preparing herself for the moment when Vivian would be revealed for what she truly was. The Mitchell family's dynamics were delicate. One wrong move could destroy not just Vivian, but Clara's relationship with her father and brother as well. Over the next few days, Clara subtly sowed seeds of doubt between Vivian and their father. She dropped casual hints, asked pointed questions, and allowed carefully timed accidents to make Vivian appear reckless. Richard, already wary of social reputation, began noticing inconsistencies in Vivian's stories. He frowned more often, glanced at her with uncertainty, and even started questioning some of her claims. Vivian sensed the shift. She confronted Clara once during a dinner, her voice low, dangerous. "I know you're behind this," she hissed. "Who else would dare to ruin me?" Clara's lips curved into a faint, calm smile. "I'm not ruining you. The truth will do that all on its own." The following evening, Clara prepared the next stage of her plan. She had arranged a family gathering, a celebration under the guise of her promotion at work. Vivian believed she had the upper hand, imagining the perfect moment to humiliate Clara in front of everyone. But the table had been set for a much different outcome. Clara reviewed every detail, seating arrangements, conversation topics, timing all choreographed to maximize impact. She had rehearsed her lines, memorized key details from Daniel's folder, and confirmed that Ethan would be positioned discreetly to intervene if Vivian tried any sudden moves. Meanwhile, Sophia monitored Vivian's communications. Each message Vivian sent to potential allies or the mysterious businessman was intercepted and documented. Clara's plan was not just to expose Vivian, it was to dismantle her control completely, leaving no room for counterattacks. The night of the gathering, Clara wore a simple yet elegant dress, her demeanor composed and confident. Vivian entered, radiant in appearance but tense underneath. She tried to smile to maintain her dominance, but every movement seemed slightly off, calculated, as if she were aware something was coming but didn't know exactly what. Dinner began with polite conversation, but the air was thick with anticipation. Clara's father, Richard, glanced between the cousins, his expression unreadable, but clearly uneasy. James sat beside Clara, his supportive gaze giving her silent strength. Clara waited, allowing Vivian to relax slightly, to let her guard down. The longer she waited, the more nervous Vivian became. She took subtle note of Vivian's reactions, the way her hands shook ever so slightly, the way her eyes darted around the room. Finally, the moment came. Clara cleared her throat and addressed the table, her voice calm, sharp, commanding attention. "Every lie you've told, every scheme you've plotted, it ends tonight, Vivian." The room froze. Vivian's eyes widened in shock, her carefully constructed composure cracking. Gasps echoed softly around the table. James's jaw dropped, Richard's face paled, and Sophia sat quietly, her expression unreadable, but satisfied. Vivian's panic grew. She attempted to speak, but the evidence Clara laid out was undeniable. Bank statements, secret agreements, manipulated emails, and proof of clandestine meetings were all revealed. The room felt like it was closing in on Vivian. "You'll never destroy me," Vivian screamed. her voice shaking with fury. "You think you're smart? You'll regret this." Clara's gaze remained icy. "The truth is stronger than any lie you've spun." Vivian made a desperate attempt to flee, but Ethan stepped forward, blocking her path. Calmly, he revealed his identity as a private investigator, hired by Clara to gather evidence and document every crime. Vivian's empire of deception crumbled in an instant. Her social standing, financial leverage, and control over the estate evaporated. Clara's meticulous planning had succeeded, but even as relief and triumph coursed through her, she knew the war was not completely over. The Mitchell estate, though outwardly calm, still held tension in its walls. Vivian's fury had not disappeared, it had only been contained. Clara realized that patience and vigilance would remain essential. Walking through the estate later that night, she allowed herself a moment to breathe. The first stage of revenge had succeeded, but she understood that true victory required foresight, caution, and continued strategy. Clara whispered quietly to herself, "This is only the beginning. The truth has been revealed, but the game is far from over." The storm had broken, but its aftershocks were just beginning to ripple through the family. And Clara, stronger, smarter, and more determined than ever, was ready for whatever came next. The Mitchell estate glowed under the soft light of chandeliers that evening, but the air was thick with tension. Clara walked through the halls with measured steps, her mind sharp and focused. Every detail had been planned, every reaction predicted. Tonight, she would bring Vivian's entire web of lies crashing down. The family gathered in the grand dining room under the pretense of celebrating Clara's promotion. Guests, family members, and close friends filled the room, unaware of the storm about to break. Vivian entered last, confident, her smile polished and perfect. She had no idea that the trap was set not for humiliation, but for ultimate exposure. Clara began the evening with small talk, allowing Vivian to relax. The conversation flowed, carefully steered by Clara to touch on subtle hints of Vivian's misdeeds. Her father, Richard, glanced at Vivian more often than at Clara, his unease slowly creeping into his posture. As dessert was cleared, Clara finally spoke, her voice calm, steady, and commanding attention. "Vivian, it's time to face the truth." Vivian laughed lightly, masking her tension. "Oh, Clara, what are you talking about?" she said, trying to maintain control. Clara's eyes met hers, icy and unwavering. "Every lie you've told, every scheme you've plotted, it ends tonight." Gasps echoed around the table. James's eyes widened in shock. Sophia leaned back in her chair, watching silently as the tension reached its peak. Richard's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. Clara revealed document after document, financial records showing hidden debts, emails proving manipulations, photos of secret meetings, and memos outlining Vivian's plan to take over the family estate. Every proof was undeniable, irrefutable. The room seemed to shrink as Vivian's world collapsed around her. Vivian's face paled, her smile fading into a mask of fury and panic. "You'll never destroy me! You think you're smart! You'll regret this!" she screamed, her voice echoing against the walls. Clara remained composed. "The truth is stronger than any lie you've spun. Every deceit, every betrayal, it ends tonight, Vivian." Vivian's panic escalated. She attempted to flee, her movements frantic. But Ethan, standing silently near the doorway, stepped forward. Calmly, he revealed his role as the private investigator Clara had hired to document every crime and manipulation Vivian had committed. Vivian froze, the evidence surrounding her like walls closing in. The room fell silent. Vivian's reputation crumbled before the eyes of family and friends. Her schemes, her manipulations, her ambitions to seize the estate all laid bare. The power she once wielded dissolved instantly. Richard sat back, speechless. His favoring of Vivian in the past now seemed misguided. He glanced at Clara, a mix of regret and newfound respect in his eyes. James exhaled deeply, relief washing over him. Clara felt a surge of vindication but knew the confrontation was not yet over. She approached Vivian, voice low, measured, yet laced with authority. "This isn't just about winning, Vivian. It's about truth, justice, and the consequences of your actions," she said, standing tall as Vivian's fury continued to flare. Vivian tried one final desperate attempt at control, accusing Clara of fabricating evidence. But Daniel, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward, confirming every detail, every proof, every manipulation Vivian had orchestrated. Vivian's last defenses crumbled under the weight of truth. The room was thick with tension, the air almost vibrating with the emotional weight of exposure. Vivian's eyes darted wildly, looking for escape, for support, for anything that might save her crumbling world. But there was none. Clara had orchestrated every move, anticipated every reaction, and ensured there was no loophole left unsealed. Ethan quietly handed Clara a folder containing all the final pieces of evidence, just in case Vivian tried to deny anything. Clara placed it on the table, letting the documents speak for themselves. Vivian's empire of lies, carefully constructed over years, was obliterated in a single night. Finally, Clara took a deep breath. The truth always finds its way, and tonight, it found you, Vivian. Vivian screamed one last time, a mixture of anger and despair, before storming out of the room. Her plans for wealth, control, and status had vanished. She was left with nothing but a tarnished reputation and the realization that Clara had outsmarted her at every turn. The family was left in stunned silence. Clara and James exchanged a glance, relief and solidarity shining in their eyes. Richard, though still flawed and strict, finally nodded toward Clara with respect. The storm had passed. Clara had won, but even in victory, she knew the game was not completely over. Vivian's fury was far from gone, and though the immediate threat was neutralized, Clara understood that vigilance, strategy, and patience would be required in the days to come. Later, as the night settled over the estate, Clara walked through the gardens. The fog swirled around her, cool and damp against her skin. She allowed herself a moment to reflect, to savor the victory and the justice achieved. But the evening held one more surprise. As she approached her door, a letter slid silently across the threshold. She bent down to pick it up. The envelope was unmarked, the contents chillingly simple. A photograph of Vivian, smiling mysteriously outside Clara's office in London. Alongside it was a single line of text. "This isn't over." Clara's jaw tightened. Her eyes scanned the darkened gardens, the fog swirling like a living thing. The victory was hers, but the war was far from complete. She folded the letter carefully, her expression calm, determined, and wary. The Mitchell estate had endured one storm. Another was on the horizon, and Clara, armed with truth, patience, and unshakable resolve, was ready to face it. The night was quiet, but the sense of suspense lingered like the fog, thick, heavy, and ominous. The night settled over the Mitchell estate, the fog curling around the ancient walls like a living thing. Inside, the family was silent. The storm of revelation had passed, but the echoes remained. Clara walked slowly through the halls, her heels soft against the marble, every step deliberate. She had won the battle. Vivian had been exposed, her schemes destroyed, her reputation in ruins. Yet, even in victory, Clara felt the weight of everything that had happened. James followed her into the library, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "You did it," he said softly. "I never doubted you." Clara gave him a faint smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "It's not just about winning, James. It's about making sure this doesn't happen again. She's dangerous, and she's not done. Yet." Richard entered quietly, his expression uncharacteristically solemn. "Clara, I owe you respect. You've shown strength I didn't expect. Perhaps I was blind before." His words were tentative, but there was sincerity behind them. Clara nodded, acknowledging his gesture. She knew he was flawed, but at least tonight, he had seen her clearly. The evening passed with an uneasy calm. Sophia and Daniel quietly shared updates on Vivian's exposure, confirming that the media coverage and documented evidence would prevent her from causing further harm for now. Every ally Clara had worked with, from Ethan to her friends at work, had played their part perfectly. But the sense of relief was short-lived. As Clara walked through the estate gardens later that night, the fog thickening around her like a blanket, a chill ran down her spine. Something didn't feel finished. And then she saw it. A small envelope slid under her door. Clara picked it up, examining it carefully. There was no name, no return address, just a photograph. She unfolded it to find Vivian, smiling with that same cold, calculating expression, standing outside Clara's office in London. Alongside it, a single line written in neat, deliberate handwriting. "This isn't over." Clara's jaw tightened. Her mind raced. She had believed the battle was done. Vivian's plans for the estate, for wealth, for manipulation, had been dismantled. Yet here was a warning, clear and chilling. Vivian had survived the fallout, and she was planning her next move. James appeared beside her, noticing the photograph. "What is it?" he asked, a mix of concern and curiosity in his voice. Clara handed it to him, her expression calm but steely. "It's a reminder," she said quietly. "She's not finished, and neither am I." That night, Clara didn't sleep. She went over every detail of Vivian's exposure, reviewing files, emails, and communications. She knew that the calm of victory could be deceptive. One misstep, one oversight, and Vivian could regain power. But Clara's resolve had never been stronger. She would not allow her life or her family's legacy to be threatened again. Ethan's voice came through in a late-night message. "She's clever, but she underestimates your patience and your strategy. Stay vigilant. The next move will be hers, but you will be ready." Clara read the message, absorbing the warning. She allowed herself a single deep breath, then looked out into the foggy gardens. London's night skyline shimmered faintly through the mist, a world of possibilities and danger stretching beyond the estate walls. The night was quiet, deceptively so, but the sense of suspense lingered, thick as the fog itself. Clara knew one thing with absolute certainty. The battle had been won, but the war was not over. Vivian was out there, planning, scheming, waiting for the perfect moment. And when that moment came, Clara would be ready, stronger, smarter, and more determined than ever. She placed the photograph on her desk, staring at Vivian's cold smile. Then she whispered to herself, a promise carried on the night wind. "This time, I will be ready for everything." The camera of imagination lingers on Clara, standing by the window, the fog swirling, the estate quiet, but alive with unseen tension. The screen fades to black, leaving viewers with a chilling sense of anticipation. A story concluded, yet a sequel promised. Outside the estate, in the shadows of London streets, the faintest echo of a laugh carried through the fog. Vivian's presence was no longer confined to the estate. Her influence, her threat, lingered. The chess game had only begun anew. Clara's eyes narrowed. She had learned, endured, and triumphed, but she knew the danger was far from over. And as the night swallowed the estate in mist, the viewers are left on edge, waiting for the inevitable next move, the next twist, the next battle. The Mitchell estate slept under a blanket of fog, but the war between two cunning cousins, two forces of intelligence and ambition, had only entered a new, darker phase.